Hey, so yeah, I kind of fucked up on the last video. I did number 14 instead of number 13, and I meant to do 13. So philosophical rambling number 13. That's a 5, a 5, and a 3. So let's get started. I apologize if the camera's a bit shaky, but I'm on a kind of a rickety kind of chair type situation here. Yeah, so it's gonna be kind of rickety, or it's gonna be moving around a bit more than I wanted to, but I'm gonna try to figure that out in future videos. So basically what's gonna happen is I'm gonna do 13 and 14 today, or 14 tomorrow, and then I'm gonna do base video on Sunday. I know these are all weird days, but this is basically when I have time to do it. Otherwise I wouldn't really know when to do it. And I don't even know when my next base video will be, because of problems I've already outlined before. So I'll try to do the base videos when I can. And actually, I've seen that my last philosophical rambling has like 17 views, and that's the most I've gotten in a while. And I don't know if that's because people are just too lazy to scroll down and look at my other videos, or, you know, no offense to you guys, but if you're not scrolling down and look at my other videos, it does kind of show laziness. Just saying. So. Great, I'm going to insult the few viewers I have. They're all going to leave. What an asshole. He called me lazy even though I am lazy. So, yeah, I mean, I guess my point is, it's weird because I don't typically space out my videos too much, and then I kind of complain about shorter viewings, or shorter views, or less views rather. But then when I leave for like about a week or so, my latest video gets like a lot of views. So I don't know what to make of that, whether I should space out my videos more, or whether that was really a good thing or not. I don't know. It's interesting. But anyway, in this one I'm going to talk about 5 different things. The racial contract with spacing, which means geography, more of a history lesson. Master versus slave morality versus savages versus civilized, and women versus men. So we got like a steel cage 6-way contest or something. I don't know. How white men actually created the savagery. And then savagery and war, and I'm going to look at the Heart of Darkness and Apocalypse Now, the Iraq War, etc. Oh, and media and race. So those are my 5 topics. Yeah, another reason why I deleted that video was because it only got to 11:30, and then it randomly stopped, and I have no idea why it stopped, but I'm hoping this one doesn't stop for some inexplicable reason. So here we go. So basically, the racial contract with spacing is an idea that Charles Mills discusses early in his book about how basically, I guess I'll say basically, how the whites spaced out what, in geographical terms, were savage lands and what weren't. And what were savage lands to the whites were any land that they did not know about or were undiscovered, or what they discovered were heavily unlike their own. So that was basically, damn, I was doing so well. So that was basically what the whites did as far as spacing and geography went, and that was the same with what happened in North America, where Native Americans would be deemed savages because their culture was very different. They didn't have a traditional god. Their communities were very much more self-government. Etc., etc. So they were deemed savages, and the land that they were on was also heavily undiscovered most of the time. So, you know, it was basically, this will bring me to a point that I'll also address, that white men actually created the savagery that they were so fearful of. And so this also becomes sort of how racism becomes more implicit than explicit, and more structural in our actions than explicitly outward, I guess, would be the word. So anyway, master versus slave morality, to review that, basically, oh damn, masters are the people who the slaves fear and who have the control over the society and are envied by the slaves. The slaves are the people who are below the masters. They have this sort of envious morality for the masters, and the masters are more of the, you know, the risk takers and the people who seek danger, and the slaves are more people who want to avoid it, and don't like, and basically just don't like the masters. So they're constantly at ends with each other. And I kind of want to draw parallels between savages and civilized people, and women versus men. So savages are people who are deemed uncivilized, or not uncivilized, but a savage person is someone who is not very advanced in comparison to where a certain society is. So maybe we could see the third world country as savages compared to us. And I mean, savage is kind of hard to make a strict definition of, because it's varied based on your culture about what makes a savage person a savage. But mostly savage people are just people who are inferior to your culture based on, I don't know, differences in the structure of your society, and it's seen as like lower for one reason or another. So it's very much socially created. And then women versus men. I'm not sure where I was going with this. Remember, of course, when I write this stuff down, these are all quick little notes from class, and I always do them weeks afterwards, so my memory's never fresh on them. Which is why this is called philosophical ramblings and not a philosophical discourse or some really constructed dialogue that I'm trying to have with people. These are just thoughts of my mind that I want to get off my chest and try to order as I go along, but often sometimes it just doesn't go well. But women versus men, I mean, you could see the women more envious of men, because men always seem to have, because of their biological differences, they seem to have these socially constructed differences that aren't necessary for society's betterment, such as men being seen as the head of the house, or having more authority than the women do, or men having less responsibility for kids than women do, etc., etc. So those are all the sort of parallels, or to bring all of that together, all these different classes of people are seen to be kind of in constant conflict with each other. Now, I'm not sure if that's true, because all this seems very socially constructed. That's not to say it's not based on nature at all. There is a lot of nature involved due to the biological inherent differences between all these people. Although not necessarily for the master versus slave morality, but I guess that could be there too, maybe. But yeah, I was just trying to draw some parallels. Just some quick parallels, not really anything in depth. So I want to get into this idea that white men actually create savagery. And what I mean by that is the whites basically have this idea that it was the new world, it was undiscovered, all these people were well, they didn't know much about them. They didn't understand them. And, honestly, I don't think many of them took the time to understand them. Or if they did, at the first signs of trouble, they said, oh, these people are no good. I was already suspicious of them. We all have this prejudice where we're very suspicious of things we don't really understand. I mean, it's a basic human thing. But often this can be used to justify many irrational actions. And I think the Pilgrims were no different. And the whites, in general, were no different. I also want to make something clear, I guess just to clarify my position on white privilege and stuff like that. I'm not trying to guilt the white race or anything into doing reparations for slavery and Native Americans and all that stuff. I'm merely pointing out what has happened in history, and what parts of history that whites like to conveniently ignore to say, well, racism doesn't exist, it was never really that big of a deal, or was a big deal, but it's not a big deal anymore. And I'm trying to show, well, yes, first of all, it was a big deal back then. It's pretty hard to deny that. I don't think there's actually many people who would deny that. But if you would deny it, you're pretty much flat out wrong, or you are flat out wrong. And for those who don't deny it but say racism isn't a big deal, well, I'm drawing these history lessons to show you, or to maybe show you that there are some corollaries to what are happening today. They're less explicit, and they're less oppression and coercion and force-based, but they're still there. And they're heavily perpetrated by government, which is where my anarchism and libertarianism comes out. And these geographical spacings and whites creating savagery basically led to war, where basically you saw in places like the Heart of Darkness, where Africa was called The Heart of Darkness, where you had to get the main character had to get someone who had been captured or who was killing other people, and the same thing for Apocalypse Now. Stanley Kubrick's great film. I think it was Stanley Kubrick, but I could be wrong. I think it was him. But anyway, it was a great film, and the main character, becomes more and more savage as time goes on. And of course, the Iraq War could be seen as heavily, dependent on whites invading non-whites. And I mean, another thought experiment you could have is, have you ever heard of non-whites invading whites? Have you ever seen? Have you ever really seen a successful non-white invasion of whites? I mean, I wouldn't think. I wouldn't say that that there's like, the Pearl Harbor was an invasion, because it wasn't. It was just a bombing. So, median race. I'm not sure where I was going with this, honestly, and I don't want the video to run out again. But I mean, that's pretty much it for the important stuff. I'm not sure where I was going with median race. I think it's how the media portrays the race and how they operate on a similar system. So yeah, I think that's about it. I think the last video doing that was kind of a fluke, but I'm not sure. I think it was just a fluke or something. So, Philosophical Ramblings number 14 will be up tomorrow, and then the base video will be on Sunday. I'm not going to talk about median race because I don't know where I was going with that. So yeah, so I'm going to leave it there, or leave it here rather, and I'll stop for now. And it's going past where it went before, so I think it was just a fluke. So anyway, thanks for watching. See you guys tomorrow or later on today.